So after reviewing a lot of films for like big budget movies this month, I want to end June on a lighter note, and we're going to talk about a small film by A24 called Past Lives. So Past Lives is a new film that has just been released, at least in my area, my neck of the woods. It's finally been released in theaters. But it is about two people who grew up being childhood sweethearts. One immigrates across the ocean to the United States. The other stays in Seoul, Korea. And throughout 24 years, they kind of reconnect a couple of times and kind of rekindle this bond that they have, which they use they call in the film, they use a term called inyon, which is like an enduring bond. It's kind of what that means, and it's kind of really deep, interesting meaning in the Korean culture and Korean language. So that whole aspect fascinated me. That's what essentially this film revolves around. So you have Nora, played by Greta Lee, and Hae-sung, played by Teo Yoo. And, these are your two leads. That's what everything centers around. I think they're utterly fantastic. I think all the acting in this is stellar. It's really good. And it's directed by Celine Song. This is actually her directorial debut. And the story is actually kind of based off of a experience she had herself with her husband and ex-boyfriend at a dinner. And this is kind of where the film idea came from. And it's this idea of these different cultures and being changed by leaving what you once knew. And there's a lot going on here for what is basically a very quiet movie. I don't know if a lot of people have seen this trailer. I think the trailer sells it to an extent where you would think it's about two former lovers or two former people who were romantically involved or wanted to be romantically involved, and about them rekindling that. But it's about so much more, and it actually, I think, is done in a very interesting way. I think there's a lot of stuff. I think if this was done by a typical Hollywood production, I think they would have gone through some different avenues. But I like the quieter nature of this film. There's a lot of silence, there's a lot of looking and longing, and these looks that you as a viewer get to kind of insert yourself into some of those moments, and you get to also kind of be like that silent observer to these quiet longing stares. And I found it kind of beautiful in that way. I do want to say, like, it was slow enough to the point where there was one point where I did kind of start to nod off. Never fully nodded off, but it was like for a second I caught myself, because it's just, there's so many times where I think it works really well when it's really quiet, and when you're getting into these intimate scenes and shots between these two actors that I think crush it. Then there's sometimes where I'm just like, why are we still doing these long shots? I get it. I think we made the point with this scene. I think we can move on. So that first time director, so I think that could be where that might have fallen into. Then there's a third actor in this, face you guys might have seen before. I've seen him lately in a show called The Umbrella Academy. He was in the first season of that. John Magaro, he plays Arthur, the husband of Nora. He's got an interesting dynamic into this, so we get to see a lot of him interact with Nora, and then you kind of get his tepid kind of hesitancy about this guy from Korea coming to visit her, who they had this pre-existing kind of relationship. But it's really interesting because, when they were kids, nothing ever happened. The most they did was hold hands, and now here they are 24 years later, and what'll happen? It's kind of coming to terms with this idea of the of inyon. As I mentioned at the top, it is this enduring connection. It is essentially like person that it doesn't even have to be romantic on any level. It can just be this powerful bond two people share that doesn't really have a definition to it, which I find utterly fascinating. And hearing the director doing interviews talk about that, I think makes it a little more interesting, because as I'm watching the film, it is this idea you're kind of revolving around, and it's an idea that everything's built upon. So it was very fascinating to learn about that, and to kind of take that, and I think afterwards, especially, you kind of reflect upon that yourself, which is something I think this movie does really well. Because I sat down, I left the movie, and I was like, yeah, that was good. And then I thought about it more, drive home and you just kind of, your mind kind of wanders and goes on like, what is your inyon? What are those relationships that you have that endure and kind of mean something, even if it wasn't romantic in nature? Just, there's a lot of those in our lives that we don't really think about or classify. And I just find that utterly fascinating. And if anything, the takeaway from this film is that you're going to gain a little bit of retrospective on yourself and your relationships with other people, which I think is actually kind of fascinating. But in terms of, will people probably like this movie? Hard to say. It is subtitled for like 95% of this movie because they're speaking Korean. I know a lot of people are turned off by subtitles. I know some people aren't. But going in, just so you know, yes, there are subtitles. There's a lot of talking in Korean. There's definitely lots of it's not like an action movie. And all the story is really character driven. So it's not like there's this big elaborate plot. It's a very simple plot. And you're kind of meandering with the characters through this relationship and these dynamics to the end of the film. And I think some people will find this boring and won't be into it in that aspect. But if you want to sit and become engaged in these characters' dynamics with one another and get swept up in maybe like similar situation that you may have found yourself in, this might be something up your alley. I think for a directorial debut, I think this is a very solid effort. I'd be curious to see what Celine Song does after this. I'm not going to say this is the greatest film I saw this year, and I'm not going to say it's bad. I definitely think this was something worth at least checking out. Maybe not one that'll get awards buzz at the end of the year. It could. I think the acting might be considered by some people to be worthy of an award. Maybe. I did think that Greta Lee's performance especially was really cool. And the camera and all the camera work and all the technical stuff, around this, I think captured all that very well. There's also this great New York Times YouTube video where the director talks about kind of setting up this scene and kind of breaking down this 3 or 4 minute scene from the film, which I thought was really well done. And you should check that out too if you're into this movie or you're curious about this movie. Maybe something like that'll sell you. Definitely look up some of the interviews for this film. I think that'll sell some people on it. But for me, I'm going to give this a solid B. I think it was really good, and the more and more I think about it, the more I'm kind of liking it. The more I kind of have a lot of respect for this film, because I do think it does a lot of cool stuff, right? But I do think there's a lot of stuff that it, first-time director might have missed some opportunities here and there, but that's just me. And so yeah, what do you guys think? Are you even interested in Past Lives? Have you even heard of Past Lives? Leave those in the comments down below. Do you have an inyon, or what is your inyon, if that's even how you would correctly use that phrase? But I digress. Yeah, guys, if you could please hit the like button, hit the thumbs up is the like button, hit the subscribe button, the little bell notification to be notified whenever I drop new videos, comments, all that stuff. It would be greatly appreciated. And that's June. What a packed month this has been. And we're getting into July with a couple of heavy hitters coming up. So I can't wait to get to July. We're halfway through the year, actually, guys. So we're at the halfway point. We got 6 more months to go for 2023. It's just absolutely crazy to me. And until the next review, guys, I'll be seeing you.